So now that we are in the correct directory, let's open up our files. And I think this should be the exact same thing you guys were working with. Let me just confirm everything's empty. Okay, great. If I move through this too quickly, you can let me know and let me just tell me to stop. This is your time, so please feel free to hop in whenever you need. Okay, so like I said, you know, if you're going to be typing, watch out for those typos like we found out with Alejandra. At least I know you weren't copy and pasting Alejandra, so that's really good. And you get to really understand the code better if you type it out. So I am going to hopefully not make too many typos. If you do see one, please, I have 8 eyeballs. Stop me and say you misspelled it because, you know, typos are just the worst, as we all know. Okay, so when we set up our server file, this is the first place we'll begin. And for now, we have a folder structure set up. But if you don't, I hope you had enough practice to start your own server. And you won't be really doing that from now on. We'll try to supply you more of the meat so you can get to the coding straight away. Okay, so the first thing to set up an Express server, as you guys know, is to require Express. And it knows where Express is because it'll look in your node modules and look for the Express folder, which is right there. All right, let's keep moving then. This part will be the repeat, so I won't really go too deep into this. We need to instantiate Express, so we save it in this variable called app. So anything we want to do on our Express app, that's why we precede it with app.blah, blah, blah. But before we go to that, let's continue this. I like to just set up my server file before I start, you know, going into my controller and routes and all that. If I know this is set up properly, then I will be good. You know what, all for now, I'll just have Express and Logger. And when we get to body parser and handlebars, I'll show you how to install it at that point in time and what happens if we don't install those. So next, let's set up the middleware.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I was writing, but I feel like I'm confused about Logger because I understand the Express and this and then variable Express because we just installed that, so I attached that in my mind, but I can't quite attach where we're using Logger, and I know because we're not installing it, so the need for or where it's coming from is kind of lost on me right now.
No problem, Audrey. That's a great question. I love this Logger tool, and I'm just about to demonstrate what it does too. So if it's still confusing, let me know, but hopefully this will clear up a lot of things. So this is for Morgan. It's called Morgan, but what it is a logging tool. And what this does, it monitors all incoming requests to our server. So anytime anything is wanting to speak to our app, it's going to log it, and I'll show you exactly what that means. For now, that's the only middleware I'll set up for now because we're not going to work with these at this second. You know what? Let's go ahead and set up our controller. So, you know, normally if we were to write our controllers directly on the server, we'll do app.get. Maybe if we want to hit the root route, we'll do that, right? But what that does is it clutters up your server. Maybe you don't want to have that, especially if you have more controllers, which you will like next week. So in order to keep our code nice and tidy, let's go ahead and create this variable called pirate controller. You can call it whatever you want, but it's very descriptive to us. So we're going to stick with the resource name and capital controller here. And we're going to require it. So when we require files just like this, we're going to require specifically this file, living in controller. So in order to get that, you know, this homework was also like a challenge in understanding how to link up your files, right? Because they're not living all on one flat directory. Instead, everything lives somewhere else. So it's a matter of understanding how to leave your directory and find it somewhere else. But really all this means, this is the same thing as basically taking all your code in the pirates file and just pasting it here. But instead of pasting it here, we're going to wrap it up in this controller variable, and now we have access to that. All right, so that just saves it to a variable, but we have to somehow use it. So we're going to use app.use, and we're going to define what resource will require that. We can name this anything, right? But our assignment said, all right, anytime we hit, so let's say anytime we visit localhost 3000 /pirates, go here, right? So if we wanted to go somewhere else, like, I don't know, go to localhost 3000 /funtimes, that's all misspelled, sorry. Then we would say, okay, you know what? We're going to have another thing for anything that is for fun times, go to, I don't know, fun times controller. Okay, so that's what this is doing. And that's why you put pirates there. It's not just some random name. You are telling it exactly where you want your server to access any files for the pirates resource. And just get used to the terminology: controller, resource, router. You're going to be using them a lot, so you'll get more familiar with the terminology. If you don't get it right now, it's not a worry at all. It's actually fine. And I'll just comment this out so it makes sense. So we're setting up our controllers. And finally, I'm going to set up my listener, which you guys have been doing at the bottom. I will just go ahead and hard code 3000 because we're not going to like deploy this or anything. It's just our homework assignment. So we can just console log listening to 3000. Whatever note in here. I have a linter going on here, so it's telling me to put in semicolons in their appropriate places. Okay, so this is our mini server. Let's first of all run it. And to run it, I should get some errors, but let's walk through them. I can node server.js. Our server lives in our server file. Our whole app is based on this one file. Okay, so let's go through this. And I feel like some of you are having nightmares for this router.use requires middleware function now. And we're going to get these errors because, yeah, we're asking for a controller's file and none exists, right? So the next step will be to, let's start coding in our controllers. So now that we moved away from our server, we're going to code in here and see if we can restart our server again, and hopefully this message goes away. And if not, we'll be able to debug the message at that time. So just like our server, remember, what is a server? It's a JavaScript file. What is our controller? It's a JavaScript file. At the end of the day, this is all just code. It could be one humongous document of JavaScript, but as you can probably imagine, that'll be just a mess to try to understand and break through. So the reason why we're putting everything in separate files is for that easy readability. It's organized. If you pass your project to someone else, I'll know exactly where the controllers are, and etc. But the advantages will become more evident when this thing gets really crazy. So because this is just another JavaScript file and it's still an Express app, we're going to have to declare Express again. So it understands, oh, okay, this is going to be a part of our Express app. Thus, I have to declare it here. And we also use this thing called router. And we do that by just instantiating router like that with a capital R. Why is that? Well, it's it'll be in Express's documentation that I think you guys have read. So yes, capitalization matters. Syntax absolutely matters too. And the final thing we're going to require is our data model. And for now, it is living in our models folder in here. So how do we require it? Again, through relative pathing, right? So why is the syntax // versus / or dot? Because if we're in our pirates folder, we have to go up one directory, one full directory back up to Pirates Wiki, and we're going to go back down to models, down to Pirates. So to do that, this means leave the directory, go back down, find the models folder, and go even further down and find the pirates.js file. Okay? And we're going to write all the routes. Go right in between this and what's the biggest lesson of the day? What do we have to do to get rid of this message? We have to export this file. Now, what does exports do? Just real quick, because these are JavaScript files that are abstracted from our main server file, we still need a way for these two files to connect to each other. So let me drag this down here. We need these to talk to each other, and the way Node apps or let's say Express apps do, we do it through exports. So for example, if you look at our models file, it's a module.exports, and you could set it to anything. But the way you can also look at this, remember, we're just dealing with JavaScript here. Whoops, that's not what I want to do. I want to take this whole object. Let's put it above here. Let's call this, I don't know, var my data is equal to this array of objects. And sorry, my toolbar is covering everything, so let me move this around for myself. And we could just export my data. And all exports is doing is sending whatever we're passing in here. So my data is literally representing just an array, a normal JavaScript array. So you know what, I'm gonna leave this here because I think some of you guys made it work, and we're gonna see if this works too. But it's nothing fancy. It doesn't matter really where it is as long as we're passing in some data. And all data is, as you know, is, I don't know, it could be as simple as a string, an array, a number. That's all data.
I have a question. So
yeah.
On the homework, it said to not touch this file. So yeah. We are allowed or not allowed?
For the homework, I didn't want you to mess with it in case you broke something here and then you have to mess with this whole file. For my demonstration, I'm just showing you that, you know, just because you don't have to touch it doesn't mean it's scary territory and no one should ever peek into it. You're going to be dealing with not hard-coded stuff. Next week, you're going to be working with a live database, so you won't see this anymore. So I wouldn't be too concerned with memorizing any of this stuff because it's all going to change soon. So models, don't memorize right now. Don't worry about it. Just know it is a piece of data that we're going to be manipulating and accessing. Okay, so we jumped straight to models, but let's go back to our controllers. Oh, another thing, you guys, make sure your files are organized. If you have a million tabs open, shame, you know, you're going to confuse yourself a lot and waste a lot of time. And also, if you guys want to know an Atom trick, as soon as you make a change, there's a blue dot up here. You see that blue dot? That means there are changes that have not yet been saved. So if you're having errors, make sure you save. And once you press Command S, that blue dot goes away. So some debugging tips for you guys. Okay, so let's go here. I'm just going to save this and run our server again. Okay, and our error message goes away. So what fixed that router message? Well, first we had to create an actual file, because if we're asking it to require something and nothing exists, it's going to be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So building this out and exporting it makes that connection. And now we're able to execute the rest of the code, and we were able to get to the bottom, and now it's listening. Okay.
I have a question about the exports.
Yes.
So we're exporting it out. We're exporting the, I'm just trying to follow what's exporting where, because on Pirates controller, it looks like you're exporting the router, but on the data, you're exporting the data. So is it just saying make this available? I know it's saying make this available to other places, but I kind of get a little confused about it when I read model exports router.
Yes, so as long as you understand that module.exports will export some form of data. So in here, we're not going to go in depth on what router is because router is an express object, and there's, you know, router's really huge. It's more than just an array of objects. It's where the magic of express routers happen. So just understand that. And how does routing work? Well, we're not going to really dive too deep into that stuff.
But I mean, I think it's also self-explanatory. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly. So it's just saying, take all this stuff that I'm putting on this page and make it available to another page.
Yes. Otherwise, this file can be anything. I could just have my own tic-tac-toe game in here, and my server does not need to know about it, you know? So if my server does want to know about it, well, I have to export it. So now that these two files are linked.
Got it.
All right. And I'm just going to do this to represent some fake routes, okay? This would be the same as if I never exported it, but if I wanted to like copy all the routes and put it in here, just like we did on our first day of making an Express app. And there are, you know, back then we didn't have controller folders, we didn't have models folders, so this is like day one stuff. But as we're advancing, we're going to be a little bit more organized, and instead, the server still needs to talk to these routes. We're just going to export them to a different file. So that's what that is. Okay. Alrighty. Okay, so let's start some controller stuff. I don't think we'll get to go through everything, but don't worry. I'll post up the solution anyway, so you guys can take a look and see where you guys got hung up. But hopefully this will be like a good refresher for what are we doing and how does it kind of work. So let's go ahead and get started with our first route. We want to build an index route, and that's the best place to start. Index route. Again, we are not referencing app because we don't have app here, just like we are here. Instead, we're using router. And all the stuff saved to router gets bundled up in here, and Express just knows what to do with it. So we all know it'll be a GET request. And we're not going to do /pirates. And I think some people, I mean, this is part of the tricky part, and I was hoping you guys will push through it, and I think many of you did. If we did /pirates, what this would mean is this route that we wrote in here is available at localhost 3000 /pirates/pirates. That's what this is saying. Why is that? Because on the server, we already established this first part. We're saying here, right? Anytime we get a request for the /pirates resource, use this. So that means anything we write in here will be following anything after here, any of these requests. That way, just / just means at our root directory. So /pirates is the same thing as with or without a /. It's saying at this very directory, do this stuff. So let's create a index route for /pirates. As you guys know, REC-RES is short for request and response. And I think we've used that word a lot. This is the stuff that's incoming and outgoing. And Audrey, we're going to see how Morgan is able to help this stuff. I don't think it's installed yet, but let's see if we can troubleshoot that. Okay, so we are going to res.render. Actually, you know what? Before we even deal with views, let's just res.send something. Let's just send, hey, it's the pirates page. And of course, quotes are messing me up. Okay. This is how I work with my thing. Don't code all your routes and all your views without even testing it. Work piece by piece. Understand, is it doing what I want it to do? So what I'm saying is, if I were to visit localhost /pirates, do I get my thing? And here's where Morgan comes in handy. Morgan tells me what request it's receiving. It's saying, hey, I got a GET request for the /resource for /. And you know what? This is what I'm giving back to you. It's a 404. It means it looked through my routes and it couldn't find anything called /. And I think that happened when I did this. That would be this route. So see, it's the same message. I visited the slash route. There's nothing that exists. And that's absolutely true. I did not require a path for just slash. I have it for slash pirates. But as we saw here too, if I go to slash pirates, I also cannot get pirates here. Let's find out why that is. I'm going to restart my server. And this is where Nodemon comes in handy. So as soon as you open up your server, any changes you make do not get updated, right? So if we do node server and access pirates again, I didn't change anything here, but now it's able to connect. So let's take a look at what Morgan told us. It said, okay, I got a GET request to the slash pirates resource. That means as soon as I hit something in this route, the server file, it'll look top down. It's gonna say, okay, is there a slash pirates? Yes, it is. It's right here. What do I do though? Okay, I'm gonna go to pirate controller, but what is that? Okay, it's saved here, which is a JavaScript file. So it knows where it goes. So now it checks to this file, reads top down again, and says, do I have a GET request to slash pirates? So it finds it, it receives that request, and then it responds with the response of just, hey, it's the pirates page. So that's kind of how this whole thing is working. So you know what, instead of node server.js, I'm gonna use Nodemon. You might freak yourself out if you make a million changes and then nothing changes. It's because you're running it through Node. And Nodemon will record any changes you save, and it'll automatically update. Now, the only time Nodemon will crash is if something inside your app like completely breaks. It'll break your whole app, and you'll have to restart Nodemon there too. Okay, so that's a little Nodemon lesson. But let's go ahead and display some pirates on the page. Before we do that, right, you guys were like, wait, we had in our labs, we had data.todo seeded, and it was saved under something else. So how do we actually grab the information? Well, remember, our array lives in here. It's basically also the same thing as if I were to cut this whole thing. I'm just going to copy. And if I pasted it right here. So instead of this require, I could just say, hey, this is going to be my thing. But again, we don't want to clutter our controllers with like model stuff because that gets too confusing. So just for example's sake, how do I access this? Well, I saved it under pirates, right? So if I need to use that model, well, I could just do like pirates, I don't know, index 0, and it'll show me the first one. So don't overthink it. Understand what your model looks like, and you'll be fine. So I'm going to just undo this stuff, and we'll go back to using this pirates. So let's see how we can grab the model first before we even like build a view for it. I'm going to console log. As you code with me, you're going to see I console log everything. I'm obsessed with it, and you'll learn some really cool stuff with it. Let's console log pirates and see if that's what gives us, if it gives us what we want. So what this means is the way to see this console log means I have to invoke this function, and hopefully this will fire. So in order for this to be invoked, I must make a request to it. So I'm going to just refresh the page. And our Morgan logs, okay, we got a GET request, and hey, it's a 304. I got something to give you. Here you go. And that's why we get this message. And it took this much time. For now, you won't have to deal with performance or anything, but that's kind of cool. So yeah, we were able to get a console log, and we were able to see, okay, pirates is a thing. Pirates is exactly what I just said. It is an array of objects. That's all it is. It's nothing fancy. It's an array. So knowing that, now we can maybe do some res.render at this point, right? Before I do that, is there any questions about the controller or the model or the server? Because we're going to jump into views. Okay, cool. If you do, just stop me. I'll be happy to explain. So, instead of sending, now let's render. Right, so there's many ways to send a response. Actually, you know what? I love doing this stuff. Let's do this. We might not get to full full create and read, but I think it's important to know what we're dealing with here. I think you might have done this in class, but you know what? Let's make another request just to console log what is res? What is this thing? It's all JavaScript. And that's the takeaway I want you to have here. So if we hit the route, it fires, and the only thing we're asking for it to do is console log this thing called res, which is short for response. And a res, it looks like, is a ginormous JavaScript object with a lot of things in it. So it has things like parser, some crazy stuff, which I'll probably never look into. I guess there's this thing called res.server, and etc. But my point is, it sends this huge object back to the browser. And you can also check out what request is, and that's extra handy because we want to see what's incoming. Anyway, so let's res.render. Now, this part of the process, there's no like rules whether you want to build your views first or you want to do your controller first, right? You need both of them to happen. So you know what? Just to be organized, I'm going to close the server file. It has not given me any issues right now, so I'm going to close it. Do I want to save? I think so. Hope that doesn't break anything. Oh, it did. Maybe it didn't want to save it. Let's just refresh it. Oh yeah, that's fine. So it's constantly spinning and spinning because we're not passing anything. So it's just waiting for a response, like a proper response. So res.render takes in two parameters, right? First is the like view name, and the section is a callback function. Is it a callback function? No, it's an object. Right. And an object. And these will just be placeholders for now. But okay. So first we want to render this thing called index. You could add, I think adding .hbs or not adding it doesn't make a difference as long as you're able to set your view engine. So you know what, I do need my server page. And let's set up our views because we don't have it here. You know, what if we run it at this point? Nothing happens. And this error message you'll get 100 times. And so let's take a look at it. Don't be afraid for this stuff. The most useful piece of information is this very first line. And the keyword is fail to look up view. That's saying, hey, you asked for me to show you a view called index.hbs in views, but no such file exists. So it stops and gives us this error message. And yeah, there are no views in here, right? So let's go ahead and create a view. And I'm gonna build my views one by one. If you're getting bored with the process, you can build all your views at once. You know what? Let's be even more proper. In our views, let's create a whole folder for our Pirates resource. In case we have other resources too, we don't want to clutter all that and get confused. So I'm going to create Pirates, and I could just drag this in here. So now index lives in our Pirates folder. And all your other views will also live in this Pirates folder. And also, without our layout page, can't really do some cool handlebar stuff. So let's go ahead and create a layout page here too. All right, so before we build out our views, we need to require it, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and set up our server. It's a two-part process, just like all this other stuff. First, we have to require it. HBS equals, there's no way to memorize this, so feel free to reference your notes all the time, as long as you know what you're doing. Like, don't just blindly say, oh yeah, HBS, that's something. And then we're gonna require it, use it down here. I'm sorry, set, right, Alejandra? We're gonna set it, we don't use it. And I'll set it maybe here, before our controllers. App.set. We are going to set our view engine to, what is it, HBS. And why do we do this? Because there are many other templating engines you can use, right? On that NodeWorks tutorial, you saw there's a Jade thing because I use Jade to view. We could use things like EJS. But here we're teaching you handlebars because I love handlebars. And then finally, we set view. And where do our views live? It lives in the views folder. And again, anytime you see these dot slashes, it's just pathing. Where does it live in relation to where we are right now? But for the most part, if your folders are set up like this, then the syntax will be fine here. If you copy and paste, just be aware if it actually lives there, okay? And let's close our server, run it. It should throw us an error, no? It'll throw us an error here when we refresh the page probably. Yeah, so we need to first install handlebars here, right? So let's install HBS. I'm just going to save it to our app. Again, if you want to install all your stuff in the beginning, go for it. You can do multiple, you can do all your packages in one line. That's fine. Again, just for demo, I'm showing you what each piece is for before we just, you know, copy paste everything. Okay, we always want to verify it got saved by always checking your package.json, which it is there. All right, I'm not sure. That error didn't really say handlebars doesn't exist, but let's refresh the page. It's going to throw us an error because we still don't have anything in our layout. So you know what? Let's build out this layout real quick. Our layout, if you guys remember, if you type in HTML and press tab, this is all your boilerplate for you. And all we need to do in here is body. Wow, that was easy. Who needs copy paste? Adam helps you so much. And let's build up our index route. And let's just have it be simple. Maybe just hi or something. And build each thing step by step. Oops. Yeah, so you could see our server has stopped. There's an error. So anything I do will not, it basically freezes this whole app. So I have to restart my server, make sure it works, and then try it again. Okay, so since I got the same route, same error again, that means let's take a look at it. It doesn't seem like it was our lack of anything in our views. And I think understanding errors is crucial to the whole process, because what's the point of creating an app and nothing breaks? Like, no, that doesn't happen. So view is not a constructor.
Yeah, views is not a constructor, but your folder, it says views with the S. Does that make a difference?
Yes. Actually, does it? Which part are you talking about, Audrey?
So if it's saying view is not a constructor, I'm assuming that it's trying to find the folder view when the folder is named views.
Yes.
So if it's looking from dash pirates, it's got to be somewhere that you told it to look at it. Right.
Absolutely. So look, I just changed view to views. And my Nodemon automatically restarted, meaning, oh, okay, your changes work now. So let's actually test it out. Okay, great. So we don't get that message anymore. So yes, Audrey, you're right. We got rid of that error by the typo. Oh my gosh. So that's why we constantly check our server every step of the way, because it could be something as little as forgetting an S. And now we get this new error. So let's take a look at what it says. So it still has to do with views. Fail to look up view index.hbs. So let's go to index.hbs. Okay, I don't think the error is here. Let's see where we're actually calling this view. So I'm going to close my server again because I don't have server issues anymore again. And I'll put our routes right over here. Okay, so it's saying, okay, I don't know what you're talking about here. Remember, our index HBS file lives in yet another directory, And what this is doing is it's looking in the views folder. So it's looking here. It starts here and it's looking for a file called index.hbs, which doesn't exist. It's hidden in a folder. So we have to path this properly. So again, this whole, like, I think 50% of this app is just figuring out the pathing. How do I actually access this stuff? Oh, that's such a headache. And I don't think you'll ever get used to it, especially as the files just get larger. Okay, so I saved it, no error here. Let's just verify on the client, and we are able to successfully show our Pirates page. Hooray! Woo! That only took 30 minutes. Okay, we have about 10 minutes to go, so let's actually get some Pirates on the page. All right, so part 1 is done. We're able to render the view. So part 1, get the view to show. And that was a whole series of steps. And part 2 will be show some dang data. All right. Remember, the second parameter always has to be an object. That's why we wrap it up in curlies. And just for some pretty syntax, let's move it over to the next line. What if I just send pirates, right? We're like, okay, maybe we could send an object as an array. That's right. What does it show? Nothing, because we don't have, we didn't ask for it to view. So let's go ahead and add some handlebars. And handlebars is so awesome because you could just integrate stuff on the page. So let's say, okay, I want to display pirates. What is this thing I'm actually passing? And you know what? We already console logged pirates, so I'm not going to do that here, but always feel free to console log the data you're working with. And we get this strange looking thing, right? It's not quite what we want, but at least we're getting something. So we know something's working. Now we want a proper object, right? A proper object has a key and a value. Hey, JavaScript fundamentals. I guess this is why we learned it. We need a key and a value. So what if we store pirates as the key, right? We want to grab that. And to make matters more confusing, we're going to assign the value of pirates, which actually corresponds to this in here. All right. When I save, Notamon refreshes. Thank you. And nothing happens. Okay, so I'm just going to, what I always do, I always shut off my server, just in case. You don't want to be like, oh my gosh, it was right the whole time, and it's because my server didn't reload. Okay, so we still get this weird thing. Just to make things not so confusing, let me call this is why we call it data. Or, let me just say info. You can call this anything. When you refresh the page, nothing should show up, right? Because Pirates doesn't know what you're talking about anymore. We want to maybe display info. But this Pirate still refers to all our data, which is just an array that lives in this. We refresh the page, and cool, it's the exact same thing. So don't get confused if these both are named the same thing. Understand what the value of the value is and what the value of the key is, because you can get stuck in there pretty easily. Okay, so it looks like it is a whole sequence of pirates. Okay, so now we have to use some special handlebars magic. We're gonna have to iterate through this, right? So, if you don't know it off the top of your head, or if you can't find it in your notes, feel free to use Google. I already have handlebars documentation up just by Googling how to iterate through an array with handlebars. And it's right here. It tells us we can use this hashtag each thing and display each thing with the keyword this. What else can we use? Ooh, looks like you can grab things by the index just by putting an @ symbol in front of it. Ooh, you can even display the key. So there's all these cool ways to show data on the page. So if anything, we can get through show today, and you'll get a lot more practice today with the other routes. So anyway, let's go ahead and do that. Let's say whoa. Let's say for each what? Well, I saved it under info, so this doesn't really help me. For each info, you know what? I'm going to change it back to pirates. Now that you know the distinction between all the names. For each pirate, we're also going to want to end the loop. So go ahead and do it with the /each. For each pirate, let us, maybe we could just display the name, right? Because a pirate object has a key of name. You know what? Maybe we can do, let's have fun. Let's do like birthplace too and see if this gives us what we want. Even though the instructions say name, feel free to play around with it. This is your app. Woohoo! We're able to get each of the pirates' names and their birthplace. We can tidy this up a little bit just by maybe we could put it on in its own paragraph or something, just to display the data a lot clearly. And maybe we can add a break to that one. Command R to refresh the page, and now we can see the data a lot clearly. Okay, so our final step today for getting our show route to work, our index page to work, let's add a link to each pirate. We're gonna use this thing they provided for us with an index. We can grab the index number of the object with the @sign. So let's see what that does. Well, this part is a two-part process because even if I make the link in order to view it, I'm gonna have to create the view page for it. So I know there's so many pieces to this. We're gonna wanna do the link inside of the loop though, right? Because if I just do one out here, it's only gonna show once, blah, blah, blah. Woo. So it doesn't append it to each one. It should show like at the very bottom. And that's not what we want. We want each one to have its own thing. So be mindful of loops. That's why we do lots of morning exercises with loops so you understand their behavior. Okay, so let's actually replace, you know what, let's test it. Again, I just like console logging everything, checking everything, make sure it behaves as how we want it, even if it's not the correct stuff. But yes, each one has its own link now. So hopefully your noggins are clicking and be like, okay, I know what to do here now. With links, you want to link it to our pirates. This is not the same as our JavaScript, right? So if you leave out the pirates, then it's literally going to go to, let's say you go to, I don't know, hi. That means that link will be available at localhost 3000/hi. And that's not what we want. We want it to go to the pirates route. That's why we're going to add that pirates route in front of it. So let's wrap this up. Pirate / how do we get the index number? Well, it looks like all you have to do is index. Could it be that easy? And let us, maybe we could say visit. Let's have some fun here. We can visit that pirate's name. Refresh the page, and now we can visit Anne Bonny, visit Jack Sparrow. And as I hover, you might have to look really closely, but look down here. Look at this message that pops up when I hover. You see localhost 3000 pirate /0. When I hover over this, pirate /1. So we know that the indexes are actually grabbing, and that was successful. And yep, /4. Now, obviously, when I click this, now we're going to start from step 1 again. That means this route is complete, and now we'll move on to our show route. But basically, repeat the process over and over again. I work kind of piece by piece through these versus like scaffolding out all my routes, scaffolding all my views, making sure I understand each file is accounted for, each file is speaking to something else. There's no like extra stuff laying around, and that I don't have anything cluttered and disorganized. Okay, so we didn't get to show each of the ones, but I know you guys had a lot of practice with that. So that will conclude this morning, and I hope